Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where the Russians, according to the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, during the previous night used 153 drones and missiles to attack the territory of Ukraine. And the Russians, as usually these days, were bombing and attacking objects of fuel infrastructure and of energy infrastructure. Let's discuss a few more important details published by Ukraine's authorities. According to Ukrenergo, emergency power outages were introduced in the city of Kyiv. Emergency power outages have been introduced in all districts of the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv. Furthermore, power will also be out tomorrow in all regions of Ukraine from 5 p.m. till 10 p.m. The company also states. So this is a very important statement, and we need to understand that the Ukrainians introduced power outages not due to a critical situation through the energy infrastructure of Ukraine or something like this. The Ukrainians announced and introduced power outages for the 1st of July of 2026 because the Ukrainians expect a massive attack from the Russian side, and probably this is going to be not even a massive attack, this is going to be a mega attack from the Russian side, when Russians would use thousands of drones and dozens of missiles. So as you can see, the Ukrainians are trying to prepare themselves in advance. They began turning off objects of energy infrastructure in advance with the purpose to reduce the damage that the Russians are able to deal during the mega attack. And most likely, according to this notification, the Russians would attack first of all objects of energy infrastructure through the entire territory of Ukraine, especially in the area of the city of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation with the daily attack. The Russians once again attacked the territory of Ukraine. As we discussed, the Russians used 153 drones, and as of the previous night, the Russians were mainly focused on the road N31 between the cities of Dnipro and Kremenchuk and further in the northwestern direction. The Russians were attacking objects of fuel infrastructure. The Russians destroyed, according to official sources, 5 gas stations through the territory of Ukraine, and we have videos on this matter. This is the first gas station that was destroyed on the road N31. The sources reported that this gas station was completely reduced to ruins. This is the second gas station that was destroyed by Russians along the same road, and here we can see already the consequences of attack. As you can see, a fire broke out right after the Russians attacked the territory, and the gas station was also completely destroyed. And the third gas station is located along the same road, further in the northwestern direction along N31 road. And here we have this video published by pro-Ukrainian sources. In this video we can see that this gas station was also wiped out by Russians as a result of the overnight attack that took place between the 30th of June and the 1st of July of 2026. The situation with objects of fuel infrastructure through the territory of Ukraine is becoming critical, but these gas stations weren't the only gas stations that were destroyed by Russians. According to information we have, a gas station was also destroyed to the west of the city of Kharkiv. We're talking about the settlement of Valshany. In this video we can see the consequences of attack. The gas station in the central part of the city, as you can see, was also wiped out by Russians as a result of Gerань strike. The Russians most likely will continue this process until they destroy every single gas station on the eastern side of the river of Dnipro. Another gas station was destroyed in the northern parts of Ukraine. This time we are talking about the settlement of Gorodnya, and in this video we can see lots of episodes of how Russians were attacking different gas stations through the northern parts of Ukraine, and one of the destroyed gas stations was located in the southern parts of the settlement. So now we can say that the number of gas stations that were destroyed by Russia Russians is already much more than 200, and I would like to remind you that according to pro-Ukrainian sources, there are just 6,000 gas stations on the territory of Ukraine, and probably 4 or even more thousand are located in the western and in the central parts of Ukraine, and only 1,000 of gas stations is located through the eastern parts of Ukraine. And as we can see, we can say right now that more than 20% of gas stations through the eastern parts of Ukraine have been already destroyed by Russians, and as we can see, the Russians are not planning to stop this process. Another gas station was also destroyed in the area of the settlement of Shakhterska. Yes, this is already a 6th gas station that was destroyed by Russians. According to different sources, here we can see a fire that broke out right after the Russians attacked the territory. The gas stations weren't the only objects that the Russians were attacking during the previous nights. We have a video from the settlement of Vasylivka. This is the main logistic hub in the area of the responsibilities of the Group of Forces East, where the Russian offensive is gaining momentum. The Ukrainians are introducing more and more troops, and they use the settlement of Vasylivka, its railway station. The Russians control the settlement, and when they see another reinforcement arrives, the Russians began bombing and attacking this territory. Lots of videos were published from the cities of Zaporizhzhia and Dnipro. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians bombed both cities with bombs and with drones, and as you can see, as for the city of Dnipro, another parking site was destroyed, and as we can see, several tracks were damaged and destroyed as a result of the overnight attack. And we see that with these attacks from the Russian side, we can see significant drop in the effectiveness of the Ukraine's mid-range and long-range strikes. For example, during the previous nights, the Ukrainians launched at least 2 waves of attacks deep inside of the territory of Russia. The first wave was launched in the evening of the 30th of June of 2026, and pro-Ukrainian sources reported that there were around 250 drones recorded in the sky of the Russian Federation. Later, we received another report, and according to the second report, the Ukrainians used additional batch of drones to attack the territory of the Russian Federation, but this time the Ukrainians were attacking in the south, mainly in the southern direction, and during the overnight attack, the Ukrainians used 220 drones. So as you can see, the Ukrainians right now are trying to find where is the weakest point of the Russian air defense, but it seems that the Ukrainians are not able to find this weak point, because the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that during the previous 24 hours, the Russians destroyed a little bit less than 400 of drones, and as of the morning of the 1st of July of 2026, we once again haven't received anything on the matter of successful strikes or on the matter of any results of the strikes that were carried out by the Ukrainians. Yes, we have some videos and some updates, for example, from the area of the city of Penza, and for example, these videos and pictures were published from the settlement. According to different sources, a military enterprise was hit by the Ukrainians. The experts reported that the Ukrainians attacked another military enterprise, which is involved in the Iskander missile production. And according to experts, this is already a third enterprise, a third military enterprise that involved in the Iskander missile production that was hit by the Ukrainians during the June of 2026 and already July of 2026, but nothing more and nothing more special. While the Russians continue wiping out Ukraine's objects of infrastructure, we see that the Ukrainians are not able to find a weak point in the Russia's air defense system. Moving further, the Ukrainians continue attacking the territory of Crimea and the logistics between Crimea, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. The most important update of the previous night is that the Ukrainians destroyed completely the bridge between the cities of Mariupol and Donetsk along N20 road. Different sources published pictures on this matter, And here we can see that the bridge was destroyed completely as a result of the overnight attack. The sources reported that the Ukrainians used up to 25 drones to attack the bridge, and as you can see, 25 drones is enough to destroy the bridge. The Ukrainians most likely will continue this process. As for the Russian side, we discussed the situation in the city of Zaporizhzhia. I would like to remind you that during the previous week, the Russians made several attempts to attack bridges along the river of Dnipro in the area of the city of Zaporizhzhia, and the Russians stopped. For some reason, the Russians decided not to attack bridges deep inside of the territory of Ukraine, despite the fact that the Ukrainians continue using these tactics. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground. And first, let's talk about the city of Orikhiv and about the Zaporizhzhia direction. Currently, this is probably the most dynamic direction along the entire line of combat contact, because the group of forces east began their major offensive operation. I would like to remind you that during the previous 5 days, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly through the eastern and the northern Zaporizhzhia directions. Up to 6 settlements were captured by Russians during the previous days, and today the Russians, more precisely the units of the group of forces east, published another report on this matter. This morning, the group of forces east reported that the Russians, as a result of clashes, established complete control over the settlement of Kopani, and this video was published by pro-Russian sources, and in this video we can see how the battle for the village was taking place. And in the final part of this video we can see at least one flag that was raised by Russians right exactly at this point. This update was published right before we started making this video, so before the next update we will adjust the map like this. The Russians right now, as we can see, are focused to maintain the lines between the settlements of Vasylivka and Lisne, and Russians most likely will continue advancing further in the western direction, and most likely now the Russians are focused to establish complete control over the settlement of Dalinka. And when it happens, then the Russians will approach the last defense layer of the city of Orikhiv. We're talking about the villages between the city of Orikhiv and, let's say, Tersianka or Nikolaevka that are located along the road TO 408. And if Ukrainians lose control over these villages, this is going to be the end of the city of Orikhiv, and this is going to be basically the beginning of the battle for the city or the Zaporizhzhia region or something like this. Furthermore, the Russians continue advancing from the southwestern parts of the city of Orikhiv, and during the previous 72 hours, or maybe during the previous 100 hours, lots of changes on the ground were recorded through this area. For example, this is the end of the 25th of June of 2026. The Russians improved their positions around the settlement of Novoandreevka, and this is already the beginning of the 1st of July. And according to these changes, we see that the Russians continue approaching the Orikhiv agglomeration from the west and from the southwest. We believe that in coming days we may receive a report that the Russians establish complete control over the settlement of Novoandreevka, and then the battle for the Orikhiv agglomeration begins at least from 3 directions: from the southwest, from the south, from the southeast. And maybe by this time the Russians will be able to improve their positions and through the northeastern parts of the Orikhiv agglomeration. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation about the Slaviansk-Konstantinovka direction. If you remember, yesterday pro-Russian sources published a report that Russians established complete control over the settlement of Malinovka, but without proofs. Today pro-Russian sources published this video where we can see at least 4 flags that were raised by Russians through the settlement of Malinovka, which means that the report that was published by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation was correct. The Russians indeed managed to capture the settlement of Malinovka, and the Russians raised at least 4 flags through the settlement, which means that Russians have strong control over the territory. As for the city of Liman, during the previous night we haven't received anything. The Russians are trying to finish the battle for the city, but it seems that the Russians still haven't managed to do this. the Kupyansk direction, another batch of changes on the ground was published by different sources, and these are the changes. During the previous nights, neutral mappers reported that Russians improved their positions between the villages of Kupyansk, Uzlovoy, Novoosinovo and Kovsharovka. We have removed territories under control of the armed forces of Ukraine. We added additional infiltration zones, and we added additional territories under complete Russian control. Especially these changes concerns the northern parts of the city of Kupyansk-Uzlovoy, because we have a video where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking, how Russians were attacking Ukrainian drones that were bombing Russian positions in this area. So we have changes, and furthermore we have changes through the northwestern parts of the city of Kupyansk as well. Russian progress on the ground was confirmed both by mappers and by a video that was published also by pro-Ukrainian sources, where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking edge positions of Russians through this part of the settlement. We see that the group of forces west intensifies their offensive operation through the northern parts of the Kupyansk direction. The group of forces north also improved their positions around the settlement of Petropavlivka, and these are the changes on the ground. We believe that in coming days, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation and the group of forces north will confirm Russian control over the settlement of Petropavlivka. As for the Sumy direction, during the previous 12 hours, nothing special was recorded, just several strikes that were carried out by Russians in the area of the Sumy objects of energy infrastructure, and as you can see, without significant changes on the ground. Meanwhile, we'll start receiving lots of very interesting political updates from the CH Ukraine. Today, the sources reported that Zaluzhny, the former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, told Zelensky that he would run for president, according to Ukrainian sources. The former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine told the former president candidate that he intends to run for president of Ukraine if elections are held in the fall. Zelensky most likely is trying to understand whether he's going to face any competition from anybody in Ukraine if elections begin during the 2026. Another important thing is that according to the commander-in-chief of the current commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Syrsky, the Russian army is preparing an offensive on Kyiv and Chernihiv. So most likely, if these offensive happen, then most likely they will happen only after the end for the Slaviansk-Konstantinovka direction. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel reminds that we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.